our first hybrid event with Rohan.
Right. And I use different payloads on my drones and look at the crops in agriculture fields, look at the crops in different colors, red, green, near infrared. And by combining these different colored images, we can tell a lot of things about agriculture, the crops, whether they are doing well or not. This is high throughput phenotyping. I'm doing that. For example, here, you can see a crop field. There are so many farmers cultivating crops, and you can pinpoint to this particular plot here and look at the growth. And the same crop in this image, you can see the green level of the same plot. Maybe there's a few acre a plot owned by the farmer Martin. And then also in this image, you can see the gaps, whether he's doing properly. Then we combine all this information and communicate to Martin, okay, you're doing good. So if he's not doing good, then we communicate to him what's wrong with his way of doing agriculture, what is the problem. So, and recently I started developing this small electronic transponder to be attached to every drone that flies in Sri Lankan airspace, so that the authorities know immediately when there's a drone in the space. Of course, if they have this device, it will help the authorities to manage their airspace properly. It will help the operators, pilots also, to bring their drones quickly onto the airspace. And then the other project that I'm doing right now is adaptive traffic control to ease up the traffic problem in Sri Lanka and other parts of the world, where there's chaos on the roads because of the static timing not being appropriate. So I use cameras, image processing, and the machine learning techniques to identify vehicles, categorize vehicles, count vehicles, and track vehicles, and then calculate the optimum timing, real time. So, in addition to my major job as a professor, teaching and research, I am also running my technology transfer office at Morato University in Sri Lanka, and I help my students and colleagues, our community, to obtain their patents for their innovations and register their industrial designs, intellectual property. And if somebody wants to have a startup, I help them, incubate them, I foster them. These are the kind of things I do with my committee at the Technology Transfer Office. I also have incorporated 2 startup companies with my former students, AGX1 and Pristine Innovations. So for today, I'm going to discuss with you one of the major problems in Sri Lanka and other parts of that region, the human-elephant conflict. Particularly, I will introduce you the human-elephant conflict in Sri Lanka, and also how effective the electric fencing is. As you know, electric fencing has been one of the major remedial techniques to mitigate human-elephant conflict, but how effective is electric fencing? And I'll introduce you the new radio collar we are developing for elephants to monitor activity, what the elephants are doing, right? Not for every elephant, but for problem elephants. And finally, elephant localization and early warning system. So with these techniques, I hope we can ease up the human-elephant conflict in Sri Lanka. So let me first tell you a bit about elephants. Elephant is the largest terrestrial animal. There are a few species like African elephant, African savanna, African forest, and then Asian elephants. The Asian elephants, they have 4 subgroups, and what we have in Sri Lanka is the biggest of that 4 species we call Elephas maximus, and it is endangered. According to the stats, we have about 2,500 elephants in the wild and about 250 in captivity, tamed elephants. And an adult elephant is about 11,000 pounds in weight and can grow up to about 3 meters. One of the problems with the elephants is that they don't have very effective digestive systems. So therefore, they have to keep eating a lot. So they eat about 150 kilos of plant matter. They eat different types of plants and keep eating for about 15, 16 hours a day. So therefore, they need a lot of land to find food. Elephants are also social animals. If you see a herd of elephants, they are mostly female and calves. The males are solitary. They stay away from the herd. Sometimes they form small groups, 2 or 3 bull groups. Elephants are also edge species. What do you mean by edge? Now you can see the geographics. You can figure out the forest. You can figure out the urban areas, human habitats. But in between, that is what the elephants really want to live, because they can find a lot of food in the edges. So in order to remedy human-elephant conflict, sometime back in Sri Lanka, the government declared these green areas as protected areas. And they drove all the elephants to protected areas and put a fence around it, assuming that elephants will stay there in the forest. But it didn't happen. You can see here where the elephants are actually. There's no correlation between real places where the elephants are and also the protected areas. Why? The carrying capacity of the protected areas is not that great. Elephants don't have food there. They like to stay closer to human habitats because they can find a lot of food there. Here you can see the edge area, and this is the protected area. In the edge area, one elephant needs about 33 hectares because a lot of food there. But in the forest, one elephant needs about 500 hectares. Why? They cannot find enough plant matter there. So these edge areas are there because the way the farmers, they're doing their cultivation basically is chain of cultivation. They clear a certain part of the forest and they cultivate for one season when the rain is there, and after that they cut their crops and they move away, leaving a lot of leftover food plant for the elephants. They really love those areas, elephants. So because of this close encounter between people and human elephants, it doesn't go well all the time. And you can see on a regular basis in Sri Lanka, the news broke up with a lot of incidents like this. Elephants raiding the crops, destroying houses, and humans retaliate by killing elephants using various techniques. So if you follow the stats, you can see it over here very clearly. If you look at 2020, 318 elephants died in Sri Lanka as a result of human-elephant conflict, and 112 people lost their lives. And in 2019, even more worst case, Sri Lanka recorded the highest number of elephant deaths in the world in one single year, that is 405. And a lot of money is spent to mitigate this problem without any serious success. The graphs are only rising, alarming. So we need to solve this problem before it gets out of control. It's already out of control, but before it gets any worse, we have to intervene. And if you dig deep down into the problem to figure out the real causes, right? One way is you can put it on the map and see where the activities are happening. On this map, you can see the dark areas is where we have highest level of human-elephant conflict activities. So if you follow it, you can see about 40% of Sri Lanka. You can see HEC activities. And if you look at the timeline, when these activities are reported, it's basically after 6 p.m. and before 6 a.m. It's a nighttime basically. It's not a daytime activity. Then if you look at how many elephants are involved in those human-elephant conflict activities, there you can see just one elephant. In most of the cases, just one solitary bull. Sometimes two bulls, or maybe three, but you don't see big herds raiding crops and destroying property. No, it's not like that. It's always one elephant, two, maybe three. If we can get rid of these guys, I think we can solve the problem by a significant degree. So in order to figure out what's wrong with the electric fencing, because everybody knows fencing is not that successful, we put up a fence in one part of Sri Lanka and studied the whole thing. So this is the fence we erected there, 3.3 kilometer long fence. First part is like concrete posts. Second part is iron. Third part is wooden. So you want to figure out which material is the best. And we designed this energizer, which gives the electric pulses like this. This is how the energizer gives out a pulse. One pulse in 1 second. And the pulse is very, very narrow. It's only 1 millisecond in width, but it can go up to about 6 to 8 kilovolts. It's a very strong pulse, but it's very narrow pulse. So therefore, it doesn't have a lot of energy to kill an animal or human. It's non-lethal, but really painful. So after erecting this fence, we monitored what's happening around it. And these are the lessons that we learned. These energizers, there is an operator who has to turn it on and off, turn it on around 5:30 in the evening and turn it off again 6:30 in the morning. But these people, they're not punctual. They don't do the job properly. Sometimes they leave the energizer on in the daytime. Sometimes they don't turn it on nighttime. And also there's a battery to be maintained, a basic maintenance. Some operators, they don't do that. And we need to put technology to automatically turn the device on and off at the regular times, and also to be able to monitor whether the voltage is enough entirely remotely. So using technology, some of these problems can be solved, but not every problem. Like, for example, intentional short circuiting. We have observed that. When the people want to trespass the fence, they short circuit the wires just to get through the fence. And also some people, they have dumped rice husk next to the fence, and this is the result of that, inviting elephants to dine. So they break the fence when they see the rice husk, nice desert for them, for the elephants. And we asked villagers to clear the fence side or 20 meters either side of the fence, but they failed to maintain that. And after a few months, you see the shrubs coming up and covering the fence, taking the current out of the fence and weakening the electric pulse. So these are the problems we encountered. And some farmers, when they do their chaina cultivation, they have put their fences next to the touching with the electric fence. This is totally illegal, but they have no respect to the law or anything. Some people, they do that. And sometimes some of their fence, chaina fence posts have fallen onto the electric fence, creating a short circuit here. And some farmers used to use these fence posts for roping cattle. Even that we identified. And sometimes we notice that the gate of the electric fence, right, has been kept open for days and weeks because of their own ease. And elephants have gone into the village through the road walking, and they trapped inside the shrub area without being able to get out of the protected area, the village area. So these are the reasons we identified as to why electric fences are failing. Most of the reasons are not technical, not because of elephants, but it is because of the behavior of the people. So not doing their basic work. So then we looked at the other side of the story, how we can stop these elephants breaking fences. So first thing we did was we looked at these videos, how elephants break fences. You can see on the left this solitary bull. He uses his trunk to approach the post, wooden post, where there's no electricity at the top, and just topple it down. Yeah, so they're very smart. And you can see on the right, the other solitary bull. He looks to me like an electrical engineer. He's touching the rope, the wires, to see whether there's pulse there, and also reach the iron part, which doesn't have any electricity, and pull down the fence. And not only that, they use logs and they just drop them onto the fence to short circuit the wires. They know about electricity very well. The big logs, when the log touches the two wires, they know it is safe to cross. And to make sure it is perfectly safe, right? It does all of these things and then cross it. Yeah, now he knows it's safe. So these are big animals. So we decided to enhance the elephant collar and try to put an IMU, the inertial measurement unit that we use in automated vehicles, autonomous vehicles like drones, for example. And this sensor that we fix somewhere here, right on the top of the collar, has roll, pitch, yaw sensing, like sway, surge, and heave when it comes to elephants. And using accelerometers and gyroscopes and fusing these sensors, we can figure out the motion of the elephant, the head or posture. And using that, we can tell whether the elephant is walking, eating, or bathing, or fence breaking. You saw the two videos earlier. The fence breaking takes a few minutes. And during that time, the behavior is very distinguishable. Using these sensors, we can tell, okay, this elephant is trying to break a fence, right? This collar is self-unlocking. You can see this unlocking device here. When the useful lifetime is over of the collar, the animal doesn't have to carry it for the rest of his life. It automatically releases itself and it will drop somewhere. This collar is NB-IoT. It's not satellite collar, so it's cost effective. For countries like Sri Lanka, it's affordable. And we are going to use this for other purposes like corridor mapping. You know, elephants, they use corridors to move around long areas. But now in Sri Lanka, at least, we don't know what are the new corridors after so many years of development projects, etc. We need to figure out what are the new corridors. And you can program other things. This is a smart collar, geofencing, and also you can monitor how far away the elephant is with respect to the fence. And also when the elephant gets closer to the fence, we can track the elephant fast. Or else when the elephant is in the deep jungle, we don't need to know where the elephant is. We just turn it off. And in the future, probably we can use this collar and augment it as a taser, putting it high voltage circuit into the collar. So when the elephant tries to break the fence, it gets the electric shock. So we hope the elephant will learn out of that experience and try to stay away from the fence. But this is a big research we need to do in the future. Here you can see the accelerometer and gyroscope data coming from the sensor. This is not actually coming from an elephant. We are yet to do that part of the research. But according to the past research, by looking at the sensor data, you can actually tell certain things like walking percentage, eating, bathing, sleeping, etc. This is too early to tell anything beyond this point. We have to collect more data and figure it out ourselves. So with these collars, probably we can handle these problem elephants in Sri Lanka, maybe 20, 30 of them. So that will help us to knock down the human-elephant conflict peak, right, to certain level, manageable level. Then comes the other problem. What about the other elephants? We can't put collars to every elephant. It's not going to work. We need to have some passive detection system for elephants. So that is why we started looking at elephant communication. So when you see elephants, they produce sound. Some sounds go in the air like acoustic, and part of that energy goes through the ground as a seismic wave. The seismic wave goes in different modes, and if you look at the Rayleigh type of wave, it goes farther distances, long distances compared with the acoustic counterpart. So that you can, at least theoretically, you can say you can detect an elephant maybe at least few kilometers away. There you can see these rumbles. In the time domain, this is what you see, the signals. You can see a lot of activities. But if you convert this into frequency domain and draw it in what is called the spectrogram, there you can see the time, and on the vertical axis, the frequency. The color tells you the strength of that waveform, that frequency. The yellow ones are strong signals, and you can read what are those frequencies. So during a certain, say about 80 seconds here, you can see how the frequencies change and how the magnitudes of those frequencies change. Now, if you have a mechanism to figure it out and tell, okay, this is the signature for elephant rumble in infrasonic, we can use that as a technique to detect elephants, and then, of course, to localize the elephant. This is the entire process we are doing. I'm not going to tell you the whole signal processing function. We are doing it here, but I can tell you this. Everybody knows about speech recognition, right? This is very much the same speech recognition. You get some data from the elephant through the geophone, and it's a time sequence, and you sample the signal for a few minutes, and then slot it into very small time windows. And then you look at what are the frequencies in that signal. And then you do all sorts of transformation, like you rescale the frequency axis using, say, log scale. And then you do the Fourier transform. And then you control the energy spectrum of the waveform. There are so many things that you do in speech recognition. It's not the way we hear it. When it comes to machine, electronic hardware, you need to have a different way of identifying words, sounds, etc. So after this entire process, we can create this waveform and figure out, okay, this is a rumble. This is a rumble. You don't know when the rumble starts, when it ends. So therefore, you have to keep doing this indefinitely until you figure out this signature. In real electronics, in hardware, in machines, this waveform is represented using a set of coefficients. So every word that we speak, if you follow this process, you can generate the set of coefficients. And this is how the machine understands the words. So with that, this is our plan going forward. So when there's an elephant, and if there's a rumble, we use geophones to detect these rumbles. And the geophones will send the digitized signal to the cloud server. And in the cloud, it will identify the rumble and also localize the position of the elephant, because it has number of sensors, is a sensor array. and then communicate the position of the elephant in terms of direction and distance to the villages, the strategic places in the village, using a particular indicator. So you can see it over here. This is the indicator we are going to use. It tells this is the direction, like southwest direction, 250 meters away, something like that. This is just an illustration. So we will have number of these indicators in the village, the boundary where we expect elephants to come for crop raiding, and the villagers would know when the elephants are ready to raid their crops. So if we can detect elephants maybe 50 meters, 100 meters away, we can give villagers some 10-15 minute time to get ready. If they know there are elephants ready to raid their crops, there's always easy way out for them to chase away the elephants. Putting up, say, fires, crackers, shouting, etc. They can easily chase the elephants away. And in this system, the rumble identification, which is a signal processing part, and also localization of the elephant is happening in the cloud. But on the geophone end, when the signal is picked up by the geophone, is a very, very weak signal, like microvolt range. You have to do all sorts of signal processing there, signal conditioning rather there, to get rid of the noise and amplify the signal. All these things are happening here at the geophones end. And then the digitized signal actually sent to the cloud for further processing. So these are the challenges we are facing ahead. We need to do the field testing. We have the apparatus prototyped, ready to be tested out there. We have tested this in the zoo, but we didn't notice or detect any rumbles. Then we realized the elephants in captivity or in the zoos, they don't need to rumble. They don't need to come. It's by basically the need of the wild elephants when they communicate between herds for mating and for food. So now we're gonna test this at elephant orphanage, or maybe we have to do it in the wild. So accurate rumble identification, partly done, but there's always room for development. Then accurate elephant localization, how do you put your sensors in the proper way, a straight line or triangle or whatever. There are some references, but there's a lot of work to be done in that area as well. And the effectiveness of the warning, how do we communicate the warning to the villagers? We have some idea, the indicator which tells the direction with respect to their houses and territory and the distance would be sufficient, but we have to verify it by actually doing it. Finally, the scalability and sustainability of the project. So we are talking about hundreds and hundreds of kilometers, long, big areas, not just one place. We have to think of how scalable the technique is, and also what is the most sustainable way of implementing this in Sri Lanka and then to the other parts of the world where we have human-elephant conflict. So there's a lot of work to be done. We have just started the collar design for solitary bull elephants. We will track them, figure out what they're trying to do, and then immediately alarm the park rangers to come and handle the elephant without letting him any chance to get out of the fence and creating chaos in the human habitats. While we are doing that, we have this infrasonic seismic based elephant detection and localization system coming up that will handle the other elephants who are not collared, so that people will get alerts when there are elephants ready to raid their crops. So I hope this way we will be able to solve this problem to a significant degree. So I'm supported by Sri Lanka Wildlife Department and also other agencies, University of Maratua, for funding and other services. So therefore, I'm confident that we can do some really good job in the next year. So I want to acknowledge the support given to me by the Global Development, my host, Laurie, Ronnie, and Dick Cahoon, and also my acknowledgement to Daniel and Gloria for arranging this session. And I'm working with Daniela Hevig from Ornithology Group and Jeff Obers and Stephen in this project. Especially Jeff is helping me out with the infrasonic propagation. What are the best ways to detect infrasonic coming from elephants? And also I want to mention Devaka Virakon, my good friend back in Sri Lanka. He's an elephant expert for his sentiments and comments and advisory. And also big thank you to everybody who joined today physically and online. So you have my contact details and websites for further communications. Thank you very much, and I would like to have your comments and questions.
Thank you so much, Professor Munasinghe. That was an amazing presentation. I certainly have a lot of questions of my own, but I want to open the floor to any of our audience members here. Does anyone have any questions?
Just curious, how much do these rumbles vary from elephant to elephant or day to day? Do they always sound the same, or do they change?
They change. There are different types of rumbles. It's not unique, but like we do the speech recognition, every word can be recognized. There are so many words, but they all have some unique set of coefficients in those words. So therefore, the rumbles also, we hope it has worked so far with the accuracy of 90%, with about 20-25 rumbles. These are different rumbles, but when you do this recognition process, signal processing process, and eventually when you get the components, the GFCC components, we call it that way, then you can separate it from the other sources of infrasonic. And also you can differentiate it from probably other rumbles, but we don't need to do that. If you can identify all the rumbles, whatever it is, as a rumble, that is good enough for the for this project. But of course, there are different types of rumbles.
Fascinating question.
A question, you mentioned putting collar, like the kind of shock collar type thing on the bull elephants, like the 20 worst, but there will be new bull elephants. So that would only work for a short period of time. Is there a way to identify the problem elephants before they start causing problems?
Without a collar, it's almost impossible.
Yeah.
But we know who these 20-30 elephants are, and the number doesn't increase so much. So it doesn't go like 40, 50, 60. It's like steady state. Generally, we have 20-30 bull elephants at any moment of time. So it's a bit easier to deal with these 20 elephants because it is the 80% of the problem. 20 elephants, 80% of the problem. So therefore, it's very cost effective. With a small team of park rangers, you can handle these 20 elephants. But if it increases to 80, 100, then of course, it's a different problem. Yeah.
I have to read questions somewhere online, I said,
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is probably too soon to know, but I was curious if the elephants potentially change their vocal behavior as they're approaching a village or when they're planning to crop raid. is there a chance that they would fall silent?
Yep. That's a very good question. This is my nightmare. If the elephants stop rumbling any communication, just like the military or paramilitary was doing before they attack somebody, they go quiet, shut down. Maybe elephants would be doing the same thing. Then we are in very big trouble. But I would think it this way. We have to make it difficult for the elephants to practice it by positioning the geophones at the strategic places. Of course, when they come very close to the crops, they might shut down all the communications. But if you place the geophones farther away, be too far into the wild, where they are still too early to stop their communication, then we can detect the elephants at that range. So a lot of work to be done, and I'm hopeful that we can find out a way out. Yeah.
So there's one question from the chat from Chase Ledoux, who says, very interesting. Have you considered any other sensory modality to use for early warning elephant detection? In my experience with elephants, Asian elephants generally don't vocalize, especially when solitary, like the problem balls you've described, but they frequently use chemical signals like pheromones.
Oh, yeah. Then it's a different problem. Yeah. So if you look at the area, the geographical area, the spread and all that, how to cover anything other than infrasonic is going to be very tough, because I don't think it propagates long distances. Vocalization is the only way out. If Asian elephants do not rumble, then it's again a problem, but we don't have much data to verify it. We will know it our own way after when we start collecting elephant rumbles, how many elephants, bull elephants actually use infrasonic for communication. Yeah, it's kind of open question.
I wondered if I could ask a little bit more about the nature of the conflict between humans and elephants. I think most of the figures that you showed us were deaths. And I'm wondering sort of generally, what is the context of how those deaths are occurring? And if you can speak to the overlap between the distribution of where elephant deaths and human deaths are they tightly overlapping, or is there a disconnect between the distribution of those?
Yeah, they are time and space disconnected. Yeah. When an elephant kills a person, it's a single out event, it's gone. And then people put traps, explosive devices in feeding areas, and elephants eat it, and then it gets into their mouth and explode when they try to squeeze it. And they put illicit electricity, like domestic electricity, into the fences, and elephants get entangled and they die. So that elephant probably is not the elephant who killed the person a week ago, right? So they are time and space wise, they are not connected. Yeah. And those farmers, they want to kill elephants because to save their crops and families. Of course, they are going through a traumatic experience, right? After spending a lot of time and energy in one whole season to cultivate the Chena, and in one night, 1 hour, the whole thing is gone. So he's resetting himself the entire life back to zero. So they can't afford to do that. So they want to kill elephants.
Where people usually killed, just sort of, they're unlucky enough to stumble across an elephant, or they're actively in the field trying to protect their crops.
Yeah. So when they get the closer to the harvesting period, they put the fence, electricity, explosive items, because that's the time when the elephants also come. So it's not a permanent barrier kind of thing that they put in the time at the end of the season, they do it that way. So
Did you have a question?
going to ask like what are there any awareness programs to make also people aware what's going on? Like rather than, like of course they hear like as you
Right.
said, right? So they need kind of like awareness programs that make people aware. So we should not feel like I really need to
Yeah.
like those patients.
I think the problem has been developing to a very serious level now. It's like chaotic problem now. You don't have the peace and order in handling the problem now. It's very chaotic thing. Therefore, awareness will not work in my understanding. The problem is so aggravated, right? Now this has to be, of course, there are awareness programs all the time. Environmentalists, they come and speak. Even we have done it when we erected the fence. We ask the people, we assemble the people in that area, explain to them, this is your fence, this is for your protection, your safety. So please look after the fence, maintain it, maintain the energizer, maintain the battery, keep the gate closed. But what we learned was completely something that we did not expect. Of course, we thought the farmers would take care of the fence because they are working with the normal tools, right? Day to day. So they can clear the fence, the shrubs and all that, they can cut either side of the fence. Even that, we didn't see them doing. I still don't understand what's going on in their minds. It's a different mindset. So awareness probably, I don't like to say it that way, but probably would not work in practical terms. This has to be handled using technology. And when it brings down to a certain level, of course, then people will be like relaxed a bit. They know this threat is a bit remote now. Now it's like doorstep for some people. When the problem is at doorstep, you don't have the peace and order in your mind to think about it and create a rational response. So their only way is, okay, get rid of the elephant, whatever means. They go to jail, there are court cases, still they do that.
I wanted to ask if further questions from the, or are there other questions? I don't wish to dominate the conversation. It's fascinating. Okay. I was wondering if there's any sense of what the carrying capacity of Sri Lanka is without the crops being a food source. In other words, if your program is successful and you're able to keep these bulls from coming into people's cultivated areas, will there be enough food to support the current elephant population? Or are we really looking at a smaller elephant population if they're not able to feed in those areas?
Yeah, so I think when they erected the protected areas, the government had number of elephant raids and locked them into the areas and put the fence around. If that works, if you provide additional food from outside and dump those banana logs or whatever different places and also some water, yeah, that might help. Actually, in one of these areas in north central part of Sri Lanka, they have the world's first elephant holding ground. That is 100 square kilometer area. There's a very strong electric fence there. It's physically also strong, right? And they can put about 100 elephants there. I don't know, about 25 elephants. But the problem is the authorities fail to provide continuous food supply to the elephants. And if you go and see the elephants, they're like very skinny elephants now. By the time they were brought in, they were like very strong bulls, but now they are kind of very skinny. So it's difficult for the government to do it in a sustainable manner. And we also don't know whether there's enough water inside elephants. So carrying capacity of those areas is not very high. But in the shrubs, where chain of cultivation is happening, you have very high carrying capacity, and elephants like it. Yeah.
We have a question in the chat from Ramita Rai, who asks, to what extent are elephant-human conflicts in the tea growing areas? How do you work with planters and tea estate workers to create new elephant corridors?
More than tea, I think is sugarcane. Sugarcane has a big problem because elephants like sugarcane. Tea growing areas, maybe there are very few cases. Elephants don't come to
Yeah,
the
I think that elevation.
elevation.
In my time on the tea estates,
Yeah.
I've never seen an elephant or any discussion of that
Yeah,
at that elevation. Or maybe in low, and even the low country estates are kind of not in the main
that's right.
elephant, the main elephant areas are in the northeast.
North central, northeast.
And
Yeah.
there's not, that's it's
Not in
really-
the central part. Yeah, but there were reports recently, a couple of elephants, maybe a bull group again in some parts in the tea area, but this is not the common situation. Maybe they came from somewhere, we don't know how, and they are kind of trapped there. Yeah. So then there's a chaos for a few weeks, and after that, maybe they continue to live in that area somehow, but it's only few elephants. It's not a crisis situation.
But in India, that is more of an issue, right? So how is the Sri Lankan case different than dealing with human-elephant conflict in other neighboring countries?
I think in Sri Lanka, because 40% of the entire land, there you can see people and humans coexist. I don't think in other parts you have this kind of very high overlap between geographically elephants and humans. So that is why it is a serious problem. And the chain of cultivation. So inviting elephants to come, right? So these few factors, I think not unique, but very specific to Sri Lanka, that like fuel the problem, the crisis.
Yeah. Oh, I guess I have one last question, that's sort of about how much data are available on the crop breeding activities of elephants with respect to particular crops. Are there certain crops that are just irresistible to an elephant that make this really vulnerable to crop breeding?
Yeah, maybe chili and that kind of crops. Yeah, but the thing is, this has to be an economically viable option for the farmers as well. So there's only so much you can grow, right? Chili, but the staple food is paddy in Sri Lanka, so farmers anyway have to grow paddy, right? And then the corn, soybean, kind of thing. So chili, elephants eat for sure, but when it is like in dry condition, right? When you like chop it and put it along the fence, of course, it's too volatile and too strong for the elephants. So there are studies in Africa, for example, they use chili to deter elephants. But the problem is scalability. You can use chili, some quantity, to deter an elephant entering in one place. We do specific places, right? But you can't build like a wall by using chili. It's not sustainable, and it doesn't last long also. Like you have to put a lot of energy to keep it going. For as an innovative idea, there is new and innovative, but it's not scalable and sustainable. Yeah.
in some parts of the world.
And bees.
Bees, I
Yeah.
was just gonna say bees
Yeah.
are, the elephants don't like bees.
That's right. Yeah. The thing is, when you create bees or chili or maybe an electric fence in one area to protect a certain village, the elephants walk along the fence and you relocate the problem in some other place. So rather than actually solving the problem, even some of the fences,
Relocate it.
they relocate the problem from point A to B.
Any other questions? No? Well, thank you so much. It was a really fascinating talk.
Thank you very
Excited to
much.
see the results of your work.
Really enjoyed.